You are listening to the Disney Dream Girls, an unofficial Disney Theme Parks podcast, and this is show number 327 for Sunday the 9th of August 2020.
Where dreams begin.
Hello and welcome to the Disney Dream Girls. My name is Michelle Young, and together with my jolly good chum Jayne Phipps, we are your guides to the place where dreams begin. Hello there, Jayne.
Hello there, Michelle, and how are we doing this week?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Today I should have been up there in the air, flying on an Air New Zealand flight all the way to lovely, gorgeous, sunny California. Obviously I'm not.
No.
Which is not very hot, not very exciting, but it is what it is. It's, one of those things in our strange and wonderful times that we are having.
Yes, very strange times.
Yes, but, plodding on. How are you, lovely?
I'm absolutely, and excuse the language, knackered at the moment. This is what happens when you decide to clear out a house and revamp a garden because you want to rent it out. And I spent, 12 hours on my feet the other day, filling a skip full of goodness knows what. And yeah, all I seem to be doing is creating myself work. But hey ho. Needs must and all that.
It'll be worth it. Think about the rental income coming in, going into the Disney Savings Fund.
Well, that's where it will be going. I've already been promised by my better half that I can have some new display cabinets to display all my Disney wares, which will be lovely because I kind of have to make do with existing stuff and kind of make it fit. So I'm going to have some purpose-built things, which is going to be lovely. And then everything else will be going into the Disney Trip Fund whenever Disney Trip may or may not be possible.
Well, you never know when it could happen.
No. So if I've got a little bit of money sat there and everything gets a green light and everything's back to normal in the flick of a switch, I can book and go, can't I?
That's what I've got, love. I've got my little bank account ISA waiting till I think it's time and suitable. And let's be realistic. Last big global pandemic, you were looking at a couple of years. So I think by the time we're all ready, we'll all be wanting to stay at the Wilderness Lodge and doing it large, won't we?
Oh, we'll be doing it big style, Michelle. Big style.
But hey ho, at least we're able to sort of share our woes with everyone else because we're not the only two in this situation. And
absolutely not.
I am feeling quite positive that I will actually get to Paris, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We've got a cracking show coming up for you, and we're going to start with some On This Day in Disney history. And I've dug out one that is close to my heart. Because on this day in 1934, Walt Disney was animated beyond belief because he was sharing with his animators his outline of what would be his first full-length animated film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And he talked them through it. And it was like from this little tiny seed grew an amazing film, the first feature-length animated film for the Disney company. It won Oscars. And it won my heart.
It is your big fave, isn't it?
It is. I do love the film. It's very simplistic, but it's just so beautiful. A lovely story. And yeah, very many happy memories of going to see it as a child.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones that without it, we wouldn't be where we are today, would we?
True.
Yeah.
True. I gather you've got something about some Poppins news.
Yes, well, on this day in 1899, a lady by the name of Helen Lyndon Gough was born in Maryborough, Queensland, Australia. So who am I talking about, Michelle? Helen Lyndon Gough.
It's that Travers woman, isn't it?
Yeah, otherwise known as Pamela Lyndon Travers. So change of name there. So so she was born on this day. Sadly passed away back in April 1996. But after her father's death, when she was just 7 years old, the family moved to a sugar plantation in New South Wales, and she was looked after by a great aunt. She changed her name to Pamela after World War One and began an acting career and had to support herself, and she wrote for a Sydney newspaper, obviously where her writing career started. She came over to set up home in England in 1924, but this was after she had a trip to the Soviet Union.
Quite a well-travelled lady then, isn't she?
Absolutely, yeah. And her first book that was published was actually called Moscow Excursion, so obviously a little bit of influence going on there. She was poorly in 1934 with pleurisy, and as she was recovering, she started to write a fantasy story. So Mary Poppins was the first of 8 books that she published from 1934 all the way through to 1988, were illustrated by Mary Shepherd, who was the daughter of the illustrator for the first Winnie the Pooh books. It's all very linked in and very Disney, isn't it? She worked for the British Ministry of Information in Manhattan, New York during World War II. And it was around that time that Roy Disney got in touch about allowing Disney to use her Mary Poppins character. She was never married, but she had an adopted son called Camillus.
Bit of a globetrotter by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I mean, New York, England, Australia, Russia. Yeah. She had a good old life, by all accounts. She may never have married, but she obviously did what she wanted to do and did all right by it, by all accounts.
Well, towards the end, she was very comfortably off with the money that she'd got from her books.
Yeah, I mean, she was very reluctant to give up the rights to Poppins, wasn't she, to do the movie? But good old Walt, I think, convinced her that he would look after it, and managed to persuade her to get the movie done. But she did all right out of old Mary, bless her.
Have you actually read the book? The first one, anyway.
I haven't, no. I will confess to never having read the book. Not something that I've ever thought of doing. I think it's probably that age of you grow up in an age where you grow up with the movie rather than the book, and it's never. They always say, "Don't." It's better to read the book first and then see the movie. But so I've never gone back to it. Have you?
No, I haven't, and I suppose it would be an interesting topic for us to have a look at, to maybe read the book and then do some comparisons about how the treatment of the characters have worked out and things. But no, it's something I've never done.
That means you just give me some homework now, doesn't it?
Yeah, read a book.
Read a book. Oh my goodness.
It does bother me though, because this was obviously a big project of Walt's to get the rights for the film. But really, there's not that much going on in the Disney theme parks connected to it.
No, I mean, it's basically a character meet and greet here, there and everywhere, isn't it? And that's about it.
Because we've no idea what's going to happen with the Epcot project.
No.
Because that's been put on a hard pause.
Yeah.
And I think even before it got on a hard pause, there was talk of it being downscaled into a basic glorified meet and greet from the original thing, wasn't it? So it's such a shame, because with it being revamped and the second film being made, you'd have thought that to have that presence, it's endured the time.
It has, and as we've mentioned before, the UK Pavilion is the ideal place to have something related to Mary Poppins, because it is so quintessentially English. We know we've got Alice there and that element, but I do think with that resurgence of Mary Poppins Returns, which I absolutely loved the movie, and there's some classic bits in that would translate so easily into some sort of themed ride, dark ride or whatever, that it would seem to be a missed opportunity, especially as you've got Lin-Manuel Miranda in there, and he seems to be a very, very hot ticket at the moment with all that he Disney seem to like and does really well. So it would be a shame to not capitalise on that aspect as well for it.
But Disney's done really well in taking these stories and putting them onto a stage. For example, the Beauty and the Beast stage show. The music from Mary Poppins would be an amazing transfer over to being a stage production in somewhere like Hollywood Studios, or even if you say to have a soundstage available in the United Kingdom Pavilion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from both, the original movie and the follow-up, I have to say the follow-up particularly is played quite regularly in this household, because it's very much a musical score. And it would seem that, in the past they've taken the elements of a movie and they've adapted it for whether it be a Broadway show or whether it be purely for a stage show within the theme parks. And we've always commented when we've sat down and watched the likes of Beauty and the Beast or gone to see the Festival of the Lion King, you are watching something that is Broadway quality. You sit there for 20, 30 minutes or whatever it may well be, and you're getting a blooming good show that's been choreographed and done especially for the parks. And there's so much that could be done with something like the Poppins franchise that would sit beautifully alongside the other ones that they've got out there.
Obviously, at the moment, that C word is stopping a lot of things happening. But, maybe when things get up and running again, this project could be revitalised and give us the attraction that this franchise does deserve.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting times going ahead, isn't it? We know that Disney announced relatively big losses this quarter where COVID first kicked in. It's going to be interesting to see how they move forward over the next few months and probably years to claw that back. And that's a whole other discussion, I would imagine. But it would be a shame if things that have been mentioned in the last, say, 12 months don't get re-picked up again. Because I think there was quite a lot of excitement about things, particularly with Mary Poppins. I think she holds a soft spot in a lot of people's hearts, especially because of the connection to Walt as well, with it being one of those projects that he actually had a hand in. I think people like to be able to commemorate that memory as well. So it would be a shame for something not to happen more than just a meet and greet. I think it needs to be dealt with a bit more reverence than that.
Well, we shall see. And mentioning Disney clawing back money, they mentioned earlier on in the week, it was released that they were planning on doing a special streaming service for Mulan.
Yeah.
We kind of weren't very keen on that though, were we?
Well, it's a funny one, isn't it? It's $30 to get this. So you've got to be a Disney Plus subscriber, and then you're going to have to pay out $30. And I suppose it depends on how you look at it. I wasn't particularly bothered about going to see it at the cinema. So as far as I'm concerned, I will wait until it's either free on Disney Plus, or what I would normally do is I would tend to wait till it comes out on Blu-ray. If there's most Disney movies I tend to wait for, they'll come out on Blu-ray. I'll spend my £15 or whatever it is to buy it, and I'm quite happy at that. I think if you had planned to go to see it at the cinema, and quite a lot of people had commented that, well, I'd be spending more than $30 to take my family of four to the cinema and buy all the treats and the car parking and the petrol and all that type of thing. You can, and they were saying they were quite happy to pay for it. I think I saw something yesterday that in order for Disney to break even on Mulan through this one-off purchase, or however they want to call it, it's going to have to, I think it's something like 1 in 5, 1 in 6 of current Disney Plus subscribers are going to have to fork out for it. So it's going to be really interesting to see just how many people would be happy. I know you could argue, well, spending a little bit of money, you're putting money into the coffers of a company that you feel passionately about, and you're going to be helping them, claw back money to put them in a better position for making either future movies or money back into the parks. But when people's money is tight because they may have lost their job or they're on a reduced income because of whatever's going off, it's a tough sell for, I think, a lot of people. And it's going to come down to, I think, everybody's personal preferences. And I think when you asked the question, Michelle, on our family page, it was pretty 50-50. And I saw a few other posts, and that seemed to be the response that was out there. You either were like, yeah, I'm happy, or a bit like me going, nah, not so much.
Not for me. I will wait, as you say. I personally am maxed out with my subscription services at the moment. So, yeah, but we've got one more celebration this coming week, Jane.
Have we?
1969, 12th of August, the Haunted Mansion attraction opened in New Orleans Square at Disneyland.
Wow.
That was the date of its grand official opening.
And what a fabulous ride we have in that.
Very, very blessed. Very blessed. So no doubt there would have been some pretty awesome merchandise available over in Disneyland for that, because they have, normally done things such as that. But alas,
Yeah, and then the only thing you'll be able to get at the moment, if you can find them, is Haunted Mansion face masks.
I would have been there for this, so it's
Oh,
even more
yeah.
like stabbing the heart.
Yeah.
But
Right.
hey ho, one of those things, as we say, can't be helped.
Yeah.
Well, this week a little bit of news caught my eye, and it got me thinking about the weird and wonderful that I have seen, and you have seen, and listeners have seen in the theme park over the last few years on our trips, because it came up on the news that Living with the Land boats started travelling backwards through the attraction for about 10 minutes, and it was due to the water jets that normally propel you forwards being switched off, so the boats just drifted backwards.
Oops.
And it got me thinking, well, that would have been a weird sight if you would have been on the attraction. Definitely a weird sight. And if you would have, enjoyed it back to front, it would have been a very weird thing. And you can go down many different avenues with this. You can be thinking about, well, what attraction would you like to go backwards on?
Yeah.
What attraction would you like to see have its whole journey turned upside down? And I started thinking, well, what about over the years some of the weird and the strange that I have actually seen in the theme park? And we've got together a few of mine, Remis. I don't think you've got that many, but we've got some from our listeners as well, haven't we, Jayne?
We have indeed, yeah. I think it's one of these weird things. I mean, there's quite a lot of, evacs type stories. And I have to say, Sam and I were thinking this afternoon, and it's one of those things that we've had a couple of close calls. We remember being on Dinosaur once and all set to go off into the realms of the Jurassic era, whatever it is. The ride vehicle just stopping, and was like, right, okay. And then nothing happened, and then lights came on, and then lights went off again, and lights came back on again, and they came up to our ride vehicle and fiddled around with the back of the ride vehicle, and we're thinking, right, okay. And that was it. And then we went, and of course, all the way around we're going, well, it's our vehicle. Our vehicles cause a problem. We're going to stop. We're going to stop in the darkest part, aren't we? And of course we didn't. We just sailed through perfectly fine. But that was the closest I've ever got to being evacuated. I've never had a ride evac at all, which I'm gutted about, absolutely gutted about. Because I know you've had quite a few.
Yeah.
And it seems to be something that's quite common with our podcast family members. So poor Angie, I don't know whether it is poor, because I think we like this, don't we, really? I always going to say poor. But anyway, Angie Johnson said the oddest thing I've ever experienced was probably the year my mom and I went to Disneyland for 2 days and had to be evacuated from Pirates, Splash, Small World, Mr. Toad, and I think the Rocket Rods. It was the first time I saw how the attractions worked, and for a few years the magic was gone. She was only 10 at the time. I got over it once I was able to understand that the mechanics and the history are also what makes it magical. Correct, but that's like, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 evacs over 2 days.
Wow, that beats my record.
And you've had quite a few, to be fair, Michelle.
True, but that is wow.
Yeah. I mean, she did comment it was the late 1990s and the park perhaps wasn't being shown that the care that it maybe is nowadays. So that's an interesting comment. Catherine Hallwong says she was evacuated from Peter Pan one time. All the lights came on, the music turned off, and it definitely took the magic away. Although she said the strangest thing that happened was when she went on It's a Small World, the music was off for the whole time. The dolls were moving, and you could hear the mouths opening and closing, but no music. Now, all I can think of is Chucky dolls comes to mind. You can imagine, can't you? And Tracy pointed out, if you've read the Kingdom Keeper series, that would definitely make it a little bit more of a peculiar one to handle, because they do come alive in that. Spoiler. Who else have we got on here? Now, our good friend and your good friend from your DLP trip, Caroline Gray, has got quite a few, bless her, little stories when she's been around and about. The first one is a little bit peculiar, to say the least. And this is going to Mickey's Not So Scary. She said there was a family that was dressed up as Star Wars characters, which is, nicely themed. She says the granddad was in green and she was trying to work out who he actually was, and she was sitting waiting for the parade. and just watching all the costumes. Then she said, I realised he was Jabba the Hutt because she noticed he got a cuff on his wrist and with a chain. She said, I then saw that his wife and this grandma, who must have been in her 80s, had got like a Jedi robe wrapped around her shoulders. They started to do a line-up to get a family photo and then asked someone to take a picture from on the street that the CMs were clearing, and she dropped the robe to show off that she was Princess Leia in the gold bikini. Now, there's not an awful lot to the gold bikini. The person taking the photo looked rather shocked, and the next thing we know is about 10 cast members appeared out of nowhere to ask her to cover up and warn that if she didn't, she would be removed. She obviously put some clothes back on that she'd worn, obviously, to get into the park, but we could hear the conversation because they were that close. It did seem several times that night, and she was fully clothed every other time that she saw them. But I mean, crikey, you've got to have a blooming good figure to rock the gold bikini, as bless her, Carrie Fisher did. But and I don't think anybody wants to see an 80-year-old in a gold bikini, do they? Really?
Well, fair dues. I'm gonna go with the age here. I'm sorry, but if I'm 80 and I've got a kick bottom figure, I will wear one. And if I haven't got a kick bottom figure, I will wear one. I don't care. But in a theme park, wearing a gold bikini is just a little bit not right. Time and place. Beach, rock on, Granny. You go, you wear your bikini, and you will look amazeballs.
Yeah.
But theme park, no.
No. So do you want to hear a couple more from Caroline?
Go on. I love Caroline's stories.
So this is going back now to Disneyland Paris. Now, originally, Disneyland Paris would let you take anything into the park, your own food and everything. Bless them. So she said that she found it very strange that a French family has such a big picnic. Apparently, they had cooler boxes full of food, jars of pickles, sauces, knives, baguettes. They carved ham off the bone and had wine.
How?
Well, yeah, and the weight of it, to be fair. They had wine, because the French, what else you can do? She said it was a huge picnic. They laid it all out on big blankets in a quiet area, just as if they did it every weekend. They had folding chairs and a table, and they had a cart to carry it all around. Now we would be hacked off at the cart, wouldn't we, Michelle?
Yeah.
Never mind anything else.
Oh my lord!
But I know Disneyland Paris because one of Simon's friends, Arthur, was a teenager in the early days of Disneyland Paris, and they would do it every week, and they would go literally every weekend. It was their thing to do. So you can imagine that perhaps, if it's your thing every weekend and you're allowed to take in whatever you want, crikey, it wouldn't happen now, would it? Can you imagine trying to get through security with that lot?
No. There's no way you'd be taking your carving knife and a leg of flipping ham. Not happening. Oh my word. Go on, what's the last one of Caroline's stories?
Right, so this is talking about Keys of the Kingdom tour at Walt Disney World. She's done it a couple of times, and she says once time they were backstage by a big water tank by the back of Splash Mountain, and the guide was telling us all about the weirdest things that he'd seen floating in the tank, or ones that he might have heard that he'd been told about had been removed, and said that the most common thing was hats and sunglasses. And as he says it, we spot a baseball cap going floating by. And so he said, see, told you. And then someone asked what was the weirdest thing he had heard of. And he said, a leg. I'm hoping they mean a prosthetic when they said that. A leg. And just as he said that, a sneaker went floating by.
Oh, my word.
So everybody laughed and told him it was his day to go and buy a lotto ticket.
That's kind of like mashing up the Jaws attraction from Universal with Splash Mountain, and the guests are actually being attacked by the shark.
Yeah, I hope to. It must have been a prosthetic. It's just the way it says leg. Or it could be that leg of ham from Disneyland Paris. It's worked its way over, perhaps. I don't know.
Oh, my word.
Bless her.
My stories don't beat that, unfortunately. It doesn't include any prosthetic limbs, doesn't include any legs of ham and carving knives. But I do recall the first year that the new Dimbo indoor play area had opened up.
Oh, right, yeah.
Over in the Magic Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And I was with a friend who had children, so they'd gone off and played, and we were just sat chatting. And next to us, this couple just came up, plonked the child down, changed the nappy, cleaned it all up. It had done a monster duty in the nappy. Okay, I understand that in circumstances you do need to change your baby's nappy. But they left the dirty nappy and went on the attraction.
No. Did they come back to pick it up?
No. 2 cast members had to come over.
Oh, that's not fair.
Gloves, litter picker and a bin bag to dispatch it. That is disgusting.
No, that's just not cricket. No, not good at all.
I weren't happy about that one. Another one was from our very first trip to Walt Disney World with the kids, and we were in the Magic Kingdom. And you know where the stocks are over in Liberty sort of tree area?
Yeah.
There was a preacher there. And he had the Bible in his hand, and you can imagine he was preaching to everybody. Well, he didn't preach for long until Disney security pounced on him and dragged him out of the park. But he was in the park and he was preaching.
I'm going to say I was very, very surprised that Disney would let that carry on, but obviously they would come down on it as soon as they could. But yeah, well, I suppose he's got a captive audience.
Yeah.
You know.
So I do gather there is evidence of this on YouTube. I did have a Google today to see if I could find it, but I gave up. But yeah, that was just a very bizarre one. Another one was some of the things I've seen being taken off guests at the security station.
Oh, okay.
And going back to what you had said about family picnic, jars of pickle. And I don't just mean like little jars of Branston pickle, like the size of your hand. I mean great big tankards of whole pickles in brine being taken off guests and all sorts of things. I thought that was very bizarre. Oh, I'm going to Disneyland. Oh, let's take a big jar of pickles.
What must I have with me? Raincoat? No, a jar of pickles.
A lot of these jars obviously are glass, and glass in a theme park kind of doesn't mix.
No.
Great job by Disney security. Absolutely spot on job. And it kind of links to another one, which isn't a weird and strange thing, but I remember the kids going on the Great Movie Ride, and they were very excited by it, and they enjoyed it. And we just got off the ride, plodded around, and they'd all had little rucksacks on the back all through the day, plodding around. And then all of a sudden, Bryony realised she hadn't got a rucksack anymore.
Uh-oh.
And it was like, no. Anyway, we got back to the attraction about 45 minutes, nearly an hour later. And explained what had happened, and they said, oh, well, every half an hour anything that's left on the ride, it disappears. Bear with us. They only went and found it.
Oh, that's cool.
That goes to tie in with the Splash Mountain hat sale, really, that they're going to have to do with all the hats that go off people and whatever. But another one, this is a funny one actually, from the Disney Cruise Line. We're at dinner and Stephen loved his Diet Coke, and he asked the server to top him up, and unfortunately Stephen got a Diet Coke shower.
No.
Yeah, his best shirt, which we were going to be wearing the next night when we were going to go to Remy. I was like, oh my God, can't believe he's had a Diet Coke shower.
Oh, that would be sticky, not pleasant.
You see, I think Stephen was being a bit sort of tricky with this one, because I'm sure it was Animator's palette, and he was desperate to have one of the Animator's palette shirts, because the waiters, their outfits changed every night to match the restaurant that they were in, because they go with you to the different restaurants on the cruise line. I'm sure he must have knocked them to try and get that free Diet Coke to try and argue and say, well, have you got a spare shirt as compensation? Bless them, Disney did do a good job, and they offered to launder his clothes and make sure everything was pristine for the next day. But yeah. And I have to ask Stephen this story. There was a story about his shoes, and I can't remember the story about his shoes, but somehow he lost a pair of shoes.
As you do, because they're not on your feet, are they?
Yeah, I can't remember it off the top of my head. They did turn up again, but it was a bit tense at the time, because I think he'd only brought one pair of decent shoes with him into the cruise line. So it was like, you can't really go to Remy in flip-flops. It's just not done.
No. The standards after all, isn't there?
Yeah. Okay, well that seems to be everything that we have to chat about this week. We thought we've brought a little bit of chuckles your way, a little bit of Disney history as well. Don't forget to pop on over to our blog, DisneyDreamGirls.com, where you'll find some show notes to go with what we have discussed on the show today. You can also catch additional exclusive audio podcast shows from us, patreon.com/Disney Dream Girls. Take a peek. You might want to just put a few extra dollars our way each month and in return get additional content from us, and our eternal thanks for doing so. We are very, very grateful to our Patreon supporters. Another big shout out for our Sunday quiz. We're having lots of fun on that at the moment.
When my audio works, yes.
Yes, it was quite funny last week that Jayne was doing a silent routine, and luckily Jayne wasn't asking the questions this week, because that would have been quite interesting.
But at least I had a really good excuse for why I did so badly.
You still could write down your answers.
Yeah, but I was trying to fix myself. I couldn't do two things at once.
We also share content and fun things that we're up to over on Instagram and Twitter @DisDreamGirls. And if you would like to update your iTunes review of the show or leave us a new one, we would be incredibly grateful, because it helps other Disney Dream Girl podcast listeners find our show and hopefully enjoy the content we bring your way, hopefully for the next few more weeks to come. But until next week, it's a goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
This podcast is part of the After Dark Podcast Network.